Hello, it's Grandpa again. I would like to thank all of you who stopped by this podcast, those who just pop in for a view, those who decide to become engaged, those who subscribe to look further into what these conversations might always be about. I really appreciate it because I know that you have other choices that you can make, and yet you choose to stop by this podcast. So thank you very much. I'm thinking about what's going on today and the fact that our government is really at war with we, the people. And two songs really remind me of what's happening. Buffalo Springfield, hey children, stop. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. And the other is Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues. We've got to find some way to bring some understanding here today. Picket lines and picket signs don't punish me with brutality. And that is what is happening today, even though those two songs were referring to wars of choice at a different time. And what we are now experiencing is the possibility of another war of choice in the United States of America with her ally, the government of Israel, invading Iran, a sovereign nation who is not a threat to the United States of America. It's a war of choice, not of necessity. And it's led by a 34-time convicted felon with 6 bankruptcies, one a gambling casino. How does one bankrupt a gambling casino in Atlantic City? Well, he convinced 78 million people to elect him as president of the richest, strongest nation in the world. John Wooden, the legendary coach of UCLA basketball team in the 60s and 70s, actually the 50s, 60s, and 70s, cautioned us that we should be more concerned with our character than with our reputation, because our character represents who we really are, and our reputation represents who people perceive us to be. That's really appropriate when you consider our current president, Donald Trump, because he has convinced people long ago, even when he wasn't. He convinced people he was a billionaire. He wasn't. He convinced people that he was a stable genius. He wasn't. He convinced people that he was a successful businessman with 6 bankruptcies. Trump Steaks, a failure. Trump Airlines, a failure. Trump University, a failure. Trump Foundation, a failure. Trump Meats, a failure. Everything the guy touches is a failure. And yet he's able to con people into believing that he is successful. And 78 million people fell for the okie doke. He said to them, Don't believe what your lying eyes see. Believe what I tell you. And they did. Now, can you imagine that after all those failures, what would he do? Well, he said he was a successful developer. Turns out he wasn't a developer at all. What he was doing was branding his name, putting his name on buildings that he didn't even own, just so he could get the money. He's a grifter. That's what he is. A major grifter and the absolute best con man in my lifetime, maybe in the history of the world. That I'll give him credit for. He also might be the most evil man in my lifetime. I don't know whether that's the most evil person in the world, but certainly in my lifetime. And the damnedest thing is that his father bankrolled him upwards of $400 million. You know, he could have just left the $400 million invested somewhere, done a hell of a lot better than rolling up 6 bankruptcies and I don't know how many fraud accounts, 34 convicted opportunities that he used to commit fraud. And on at least 2 occasions, the court has adjudicated that he was sexually assaulting a woman. So where are we now? We are now on the brink of a war, which I regret very much, because Trump does not want to release the Epstein Files. And his enablers in his administration are covering up for him, because many of his enablers are also involved with Epstein, the most notorious sex trafficker and pedophile of our time, who boasted that President Trump was his best friend for 15 years. Many of those years during the time which Epstein was convicted of soliciting prostitution, which was a plea down from his pedophilia and sex trafficking, and possibly money laundering. Who knows what we'll find? You know, I don't say this lightly, that I regret very much that we are on the brink of war. My father served in World War I as in the Quartermaster Corps. And of course, those were the guys who had to avoid the poison gas as they were trying to get supplies to the front. My brother and my uncle in World War II, one of my uncles liberated the concentration camp while he was with Patton's tank corps. And the other was with the Quartermaster Corps during the Red Ball Express in Italy. And I was served as in the U.S. Air Force with the occupation forces in Japan and with the United Nations forces in Korea. So I don't take it lightly and without consideration that we are in this war and that there is a possibility that many lives will be lost. Some have already begun, including 3 American soldiers. So we're again in a quagmire similar to Afghanistan, similar to Vietnam. Even in Korea, we fought to a draw. And after all those years, we eventually had to agree to a demilitarized zone and 2 countries on that peninsula, North Korea and South Korea, that exist today. How many casualties did that cause? And how many casualties will this new war cause? And why? To distract from the fact that the president does not want to release the Epstein Files. Why? What's in those files that is so damaging that our president doesn't want we, the people, and they, the survivors, to know? So he will do anything, including 8 wars so far: Nigeria, Somalia, the Caribbean, Venezuela, Iran twice. I mean, it's, 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 I guess you could say it's profane. Um, it's incredible that he will go to these lengths to prevent us from seeing whether he is or is not, we don't know, guilty of sex trafficking, of pedophilia, of money laundering, of orchestrating international sex trafficking ring. But if he releases those Epstein files, we will know. So, what do we do at this point with the Republican Congress exceeding their responsibility to a criminal president who has 34 felony convictions, is a known pathological liar, and who's been adjudged as narcissistic by psychiatrists who has observed his behavior? And it's not necessary, incidentally, to provide individual clinical services to someone before you can make that judgment. You can make it on the basis of what you see. Professionally, maybe they are held to a different standard, but publicly, they have a different responsibility. And they responded. So I thank them for that enlightening bit of information, because I have never seen a person who amazes me at the depths to which he can go to be inhuman. I often say, well, that's it. He can't go any lower. And then he goes lower. And then the next time I think, can't go any lower than that. And he goes even lower. So I believe that there's a bottomless pit of evil and meanness. There was a song, I can't recall now, but it was a song, I can't think of who it was, that said something like nothing, that when a man has nothing, it will cause some man to become a liar, and it will cause some other men to catch on fire. But when there's too much of nothing, it just makes a fellow mean. And I think that's what's happening with this president. There is nothing there. There's a vacuum there that exists where a human being should be. There is no empathy, no morals, no depth to which he will not sink, no action that he will not take if it enriches his fortune or the fortune of his family and seemingly of his friends. So what are we, the people, supposed to do? One, demand the release of the Epstein Files. Continue to take to the streets to protest, to show the extreme disapproval that we have for Gestapo-like tactics of the ICE and Homeland Security officers who are disregarding the constitutional rights of individuals, questioning our citizenships with no authority to do so, breaking and entering our homes with no authority to do so, damaging automobiles, dragging people out of automobiles, throwing them to the ground with no authority to do so. So we have to demand the release of the Epstein Files. And at the same time, we have to demand that those who enable the insurrection and who continue to enable the cover-up and those who participate either as active participants or enablers in the Epstein tragedy be held to account. And if that means that they go to prison, fine. Whomever was engaged, whether Democrat, Republican, independent, declined to state, wealthy, not wealthy, foreign citizen, whomever, should be held to account and brought to justice for those young girls and women who've been victimized through sex trafficking and rape. So on King Day, which is March 28th, just a little more than a month and a half from now, we'll have an opportunity to match those 78 million people who voted to elect this criminal-minded, narcissistic, pathological liar to the highest office we have in our land. What if we could match that 78 million people on No King's Day on the 28th? That would be marvelous. That would show the country and the world and this administration the extent to which we detest and reject his current methods of attempting to disrupt and destroy the Constitution of this country. You know, one of the things about the United States in particular, and what makes it so unique, is that it's a foundation of a country based on values. And those values are humanistic values, forming a more perfect union, realizing the imperfections of individuals, And yet, making that one of the first tasks of we, the people, to help form the union ourselves. So being in protests, being in the streets, we are helping to form that more perfect union. To promote the general welfare. Nothing was more beautiful than the people of Minneapolis, Minnesota, who created a virtual underground railroad to provide food and shelter for people who were fearful that they would be deported if they came out in public, who provided an escort for the children of those possible deportees to ensure that their children should go to school. And in a democracy, one of the things that we have enjoyed is freedom of travel without a passport, without the identification, simply because we are in this country. We have been allowed to travel wherever we want and not accede to demands of having papers. That's authoritarian rule. And this country was established as a result of rejecting authoritarian rule in favor of a pluralistic democracy. The motto of the United States of America is E pluribus unum, out of many, one. So when the Trump administration tells you that they want to kill DEI, they want to kill pluribus. They want to kill many in favor of white supremacy. And that's a critical issue at this time because it's actually causing division of families. Imagine what it is and how difficult it is to interact with a family member who, despite all the transgressions that are publicly known about this president, still support him or refuse to discuss any of the issues of the current day simply because they're family. And the history of my family, blood relation only lets you know who's blood related. Doesn't let you know who's family. Family is based on values. What do we share as a family? When do we come together as a family? How do we stand against others as a family? Those are based on family values, not on family blood ties. So those of you out there, remember what we can do on March 28th is try to match that 78 million voters who elected this president. And in November, what if we could double that number and take over the Senate and the House? Then we could impeach this president. We wouldn't have to wait 3 more years. We could impeach this president, and having already had the Oversight Committee set the precedent that a former president rather, and a former first lady can be subpoenaed, we should impeach this president and subpoena him and the former first lady to testify before the committee so that we, the people, and they, the survivors, would know the truth. So, as I like to say, take care of yourself. And if you can, take care of somebody else. And demand that they release the Epstein Files. Thank you. Goodbye.